The Titanic Enigma, beyond iceberg collision and cinematic myths. The greatest work of engineering made by modern humans. The Titanic ship, which they called the unsinkable, the one that not even God could sink, sank on its first maiden voyage. And as always, we know the story from the movies. In this case, many and very blockbusters, leaving everything in a simple and romantic love story. But something doesn't add up in this story, and it's pure physics. The official version says that the Titanic grazed that she did not collide with an iceberg, which occurred when passing a gap in the hull 120 meters long. But the underwater ice of an iceberg can never produce such a crack in a 2.5 centimeter double-plate steel hull. And when you investigate the topic a little, surprises begin that are not so well known. The Olympic, already operating and captained by the same Captain Smith, who would later be the captain of the Titanic. The Titanic had a twin brother, but less luxurious, called Olympic, chartered a few months earlier, the two owners of J.P. Morgan. The Olympic, already in operation and captained by the same Captain Smith, who would later be the captain of the Titanic had a twin brother, but less luxurious, called Olympic. Chartered a few months earlier, the two owners of J.P. Morgan. The Olympic, already in operation and captained by the same Captain Smith, who would later be the captain of the Titanic. It had a serious accident with an English warship, which caused structural, grave, and irreparable damage, which made it almost a product of scrapping. But its owner, J.P. Morgan, had not insured the Olympic and had to take charge of the repair of the two ships. At breakfast, in 1911, the two ships were together in the shipyard, and in those months, they changed the name of the hulls, adding a fourth chimney that did not work, and they decorated the damaged Olympic so that it would supplant the Titanic. Adding a fourth chimney that did not work, and they decorated the damaged Olympic so that it would supplant the Titanic. And on the famous maiden voyage, the Olympian left damaged and listing, posing as the Titanic. With this, the insurance company covered the operation with $5 million at the time, and the authentic Titanic continued sailing under the Olympic name until 1935. Curious story, right? But that is not the only surprise, far from it, because 5 days before the Titanic, a ship called SS California leaves the same owner, J.P. Morgan, loaded only with blankets and sweaters. And that it remains anchored at the point where the events were going to occur is curious. That before taking the Titanic, he removes half of all the boats and life-saving vests, it is disturbing. That Captain Smith, with 25 years of experience and perfect knowledge of the route, deviates from his destination and ignores 7 alerts for iceberg, it's rare. That the lookout does not have her main tool, binoculars, is ridiculous. That the ship's radio stops working a few hours before is unlikely. Let them make a mistake and launch white revenges, which means celebration. Instead of red lights, which are the SOS signal, it's silly. That on a maiden voyage loaded with journalists, no one would take a single photo of the tragedy is absurd. But ice-cutting steel is impossible, pure physics. And well, we'll think, is this whole setup to deceive the insurance company? No, of course, what was at stake here was the creation of the Federal Reserve, where half of the great businessmen of the moment, such as the Rockefeller, Rothschild, Morgan, etc., families, they were in his favor. But the other half, the Aston, Guggenheim, and Strauss families, saw it as pure madness. Well, those who were in favor, like J.P. Morgan, as owner, and despite it being the maiden voyage of his ship, decided at the last minute not to embark. Both he and some 50 friends and members of the shipping company, reaching some of them to leave their personal belongings and service personnel inside. And coincidentally, all those who were against the creation of the Federal Reserve died. The following year, 1913, and without opposition, the surviving bankers met and created the Federal Reserve. And the following year, 1914, the First World War began, financed on both sides by the Reserve itself. But the moment came in 1985 when they found the Titanic at a depth of 3,000 meters. And, oh surprise, it turns out that it does not have a gap of 120 meters, but rather it has several holes of between 1 and 50 centimeters, apparently produced by several explosions that occur from the inside out, and on the propellers the name Olympia. We got the final surprise when there is a book, also called Titan, by Morgan Robertson, describing to the millimeter what happened on the Titanic, but written 14 years before. Well, let's see if now some production company deigns to make us a more credible film about what happened in order to dispel the great doubts that we all have about the sinking of the Titanic. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more thought-provoking content on history's most captivating mysteries.